I will begin with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. I thank you for these students. Just ask that you bless this class. Ask you that you'd give understanding to us. Just guide our steps and help us to glorify you in what we do, Lord. In your name I pray. Amen. So if you guys don't talk while I'm talking, I'll try not to yell at you this time. But so yeah, last time we talked about simple and compound interest, right? And so let me turn off the lights up here for a second so you guys can see it better. Well, that was not the desired effect. What was that? Do you guys see that?
You need to think for a second.
Okay. Huh. Interesting. All right. Well, it's working. So simple interest is PRT, right? I hope you guys have been able to do the homework on that. Any questions about the simple interest problems? Okay. So we went over these examples last time, right? We talked about the maturity and future value. We talked about, so this problem here. So look, the way I did this example in class was to put numbers in, right? And then solve for the variable. But what could you also do? If you don't want to put the numbers in first, you could do what? We could have just solved the original equation for r on this problem instead, right? Like another way to do problem, example 6, and this might be better, actually, right? Would be to solve for r. I'll do it in green. So if I solve for r directly here, r is equal to what? R is equal to I divided by p and t, right? So you could work this problem like that instead, then put the numbers in. Here the interest was what? $81, and the principal was $2,700, and the time was what? 8 months, which is 2/3 of a year, right? Now if you do all that, what happens is you get to the same calculation, right? Like 2/3 of 2,700 is 1,800, so like we're going to find the same answer. As a general point of order though, at least I find that it's better to solve for the letter and then put numbers in. So I think what I did in this last lecture is not best practice really. But okay, so that kind of depends on your level of comfort algebraically, right? Like some people, what I wrote in green, for whatever reason, you have a mental block about that, right? But maybe what I wrote in purple, you understand. If you're such a person, then by all means, follow the purple road. But if you understand what I did in green, go for that. It's better. All right, enough about this. Any questions? All right. I want to go to the end of this lecture here. Yeah, this is already posted since last week, I think. If it's not, let me know. It should be in the module from last week. So I talked about compounded interest, right? Compounding periods, monthly. Here's the compound interest formula here. So the compound interest formula says that the future amount is the principal times 1 plus the rate, the yearly rate, divided by the number of compounding periods, right? And here t is the number of years. So for example, if we invest $26,000 at 7%, we do 1 plus 0.07 divided by 12 to the n times t, which is 108, and we got that number, right? So the problem I haven't talked about yet in class was this one, all right? So here the question is, it's a different question, right? So the question is, how much do you have to invest at 6% in order to have $14,000 in 6 years, right? And we're compounding monthly, okay? So how does that work? Well, it's again governed by the A equals to the compound interest formula. But this time, So your book gives a different name to this. I forget what it is, but I would, if you can do algebra, you just solve for P. We know A is 14,000. We know R, it's 0.06. We know N, it's 12, right? We know T is 6, so we know everything here except for the principal, right? So solve for P. And if I solve for P, I just divide by this quantity here to the other side. It gives me this formula, right? And then I just plug the numbers in, and I get this. Now, I've showed some of you who've come to my office hours or whatever, I've showed you this tool. I think I'm going to show the class now, all right? So let me before I switch over to my computer, any questions about this? All right. This is dangerous. Come on. Of course, my computer's gone to sleep. Wake up. Ah. All right, where was I? So, this website right here, this is Wolfram Alpha. So this doesn't help you on the test, let's say, but it will help you in the homework, right? Because one of the things you've run up against is that crunching the numbers in this last homework, for some of you, caused you some trouble, didn't it? A little bit? Especially, so, let me steal your calculator for a second. Because if you're not the only one, I should talk about this. Anybody else have this calculator? BA2 Plus Texas Instruments? Anybody? They were selling these at the bookstore, this thing? No? You have one of these? This calculator?
No, I don't.
No? Okay, good. So this is an evil calculator because it like arbitrarily rounds off at 2 decimal places. And it's like, it's hardwired into that calculator. So like that calculator, if you do like, for example, 1 divided by 3, it will give you back like 0.33. But is 1 divided by 3 0.33? It is not. It's 0.3333333333 forever and ever, right? So you'd like for your calculator to keep track of like, by default, like 8 of those 3s, something like that. Most calculators do, but not that one. So if you're having trouble with your calculator, you know, ask yourself, is it actually a problem with the calculator or is it a problem with you? You know, it might be a problem with the calculator. Now, so one of the ways around that, at least for your homework, you do want to have a reliable calculator for the next test, right? Because doing those kind of calculations is part of it. But Wolfram Alpha is a great way to do calculations like we were just doing. So like, for example, here, I don't know if you, let me see if I can blow this up. There we go. All right, so it's pretty simple. This will do all kinds of things. But one of the things it'll do for us is like, let me just put the numbers that I was just, example 12. So we had 14,000 divided by, and it was 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12. And that was all raised to the, what was it? 72 power in this example, because it was 6 years for 12 compounding periods, so 72. And so the thing I like about this is it shows you, right? It shows you what you just put in, for one thing. So I've got 14,000, right, divided by 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12 to the 72. So you can see what you did. Double check that you're really doing what you think you're doing, right? And of course, it gives you the number, right? So if you're having trouble with the numerics in your homework, I would encourage you to consider using this website to supplement your calculator. Now, you do need to figure out how to do the keystrokes through the calculator because you have to take a test, right? But just a thought, okay? This is very helpful for like physics or chemistry where you got big numbers. So this website, very helpful for like numerics. Any questions? No? So I think I have made a grievous error. I think I forgot to bring blank paper with me. Let's see if I got any. This is a stack of test papers. I guess I could work on the back of some of your tests. Would you? That seems like a bad idea. Oh, here's some blank tests. I can work on these. Woohoo! All right. So the next problem, the last problem in your homework was on what? Inflation? How do we talk about inflation? Oh, well, I guess I need to switch back, huh? There we go, inflation. So inflation is, it's yearly compounding. It's yearly compounding. So that's the definition of inflation. It's a yearly rate. So when we calculate inflation using the compound interest formula, we have to use the number of compounding periods as 1. So for example, I'll call this example 1 for today. If you earned, let's say, $60,000, right, in 2005, then what is that salary adjusted for inflation in, let's say, 2022, given inflation rate of, let's see here, what's the inflation rate? It's more right now, right? But let's just say for the sake of discussion, it's been 6%. Now that's not accurate, all right? I'm not sure what the average inflation rate has been since, I mean, I think it's different from year to year, right? Truth be told. But if you assume a constant inflation rate, just for the sake of discussion, we can use the compound interest formula to calculate the adjusted salary, right? Now, does your employer actually adjust your salary like this? We wish, right? We wish. In practice, not usually. Unless you're the government. If you can steal other people's money, you can make your money easier. Let's see here. So short of, all right, so what's the formula? We need to use the compound interest formula. You guys remember what that is? It's over here, right? So A equals to P times 1 plus R over N to the NT. Okay, so that's the compound interest formula. Now we need to identify what's going on here. What's R? Well, that's easy. It is 6%, so that's 0.06, right? N. Now this is what caught me off guard. I was like, wait a minute, what's the number of compounding periods for inflation? It's 1, right? This is a convention. So N is equal to 1. Because it's a yearly rate. And then what else here? Time. What's the time here? So we need what? 2022 minus 2005, which is what?
17.
17. So 17 years have passed. And the P was what? 60,000. So we plug those numbers in. And what do we get? So this is very silly. Divide by 1. I had a friend in college who used to tutor people, and he'd get really, really angry when he saw students add 0 or multiply 1 with their calculator. So I don't know how I mean, he had some anger issues. He's a good guy, though. He was a double major in physics and mechanical engineering when I met him. And he eventually got too mad at a particular mechanical. He said he wanted to go punch the professor in the face a lot of days, so he had to drop the class, and he realized at that point he needed to drop the major. So he dropped his mechanical engineering major, and he just focused on physics at one point. And I could kind of hang with Paul before he dropped the mechanical engineering. Like I mean, I'm not the best physics student, but I was comparable to Paul. After he dropped that mechanical engineering, he became another creature altogether. We used to joke that if you looked at him carefully during the test, you could see a faint yellow glow. Like, so we were watching Dragon Ball Z at the time. Context, you know. But anyway, I sometimes refer to him as Somber Paul because there were 2 Pauls in my life. The one was somber, the other one was crazy. I still talk to Crazy Paul a fair amount. He's a good guy. It's actually a border guard. So 60,000 times 1.06. I'm using the Wolfram Alpha because I've got it open anyway, so why not? 1.06 to the 7th power. Wait a minute, 7th power? Wait a minute, no, 17. 17th power. What do we got? Whoa, that's depressing. Is that right? Dang. $161,566.37. 161,566.37. So, you go get a job, right? There's 9% inflation right now, right? 11%? You think you have a good salary? Wait 10 years. Do you still have a good salary? Not unless they adjust it, right? Anyway, hopefully we'll stop having 10% inflation here pretty soon, right? Because it's somewhat troubling. Now, thankfully, this is not a true story, all right? If you study the inflation rates since 2005, like 2005 to 2020, fun fact, if you had $100 in 2005, in 2020, that $100 is worth about $150. So that's what the inflation was from, say, 2005 to 2020. So that's not 6% per year. It's less than that, right? So the current inflation is really, really high. All right, so anyway, any questions about that? We good? So next we need to talk about home ownership. And loans. So many of you at some point will want to buy a house. Yes? Okay, I'm basically skipping there's 2 sections on credit cards and like consumer loans. I'm not really saying much about those. So you guys have credit cards, right? What should you do with credit cards? Should you keep a balance and like just pay the minimum payment? No, you should not do this, right? They are taking your money like mad, right? You need, like, the way to have a credit card, if you're going to have a credit card, you need to pay the balance. Like you cannot leave a balance, basically. If you leave a balance, it's not wise, right? Because the interest rates on credit cards are higher than anything else. Of course, we all have, at various points in time, trouble in our lives where we can't pay the credit cards off. But if that's a pattern of your life, you need to change it because you're just not being a good steward with your money, right? That's basically what I would tell you if we covered the credit card section. But it's complicated, right? Credit cards have a lot of like nuanced rules, and whatever interest rate they have, what they'll get you for in terms of late payments, that would be much worse, right? Like a simple like $30 late charge is probably going to be more than your interest or something, things like that. creep up on you really fast. So home ownership, how do you typically buy a home, right? How does that work? So let's suppose that you have, let's see, this is example 2, I suppose. Suppose you're going to buy a house, right? And you find a house, the cost is what? So let's make up a price. What's the typical house cost these days? $500,000? Sure, why not? Let's get nuts. $500,000. I mean, depending on what state you're in, that might be cheap, right? Around here, I think the median home price is like, I think, well, new houses are for like $375 or $400 if they're smaller. You know, you can find houses for like $300, $200. It's getting harder around here. So suppose the house costs $500,000, right? You don't have $500,000, let's say, right? Try as you might, you don't have as many Instagram followers as you'd hoped, right? Your YouTube channel's monetization's flailing, right? Like I personally haven't even monetized my YouTube channel. I'm probably missing like tens of dollars, you know? How much could I make? I have like, what, 14,000 subscribers? What would that get me in monetization? Not much, right? Anyway, so my point, you don't have $500,000, right? So what do you got to do? First of all, you need to get gainful employment so that the bank will talk to you, right? Once you have a job that has a salary, or you have had the job long enough that you can prove that you're getting paid a certain amount reliably over a certain time period, right? At that point, the bank will work with you, get you a loan, right? And then how does it work? Can you just say, okay, I'm going to get this loan for $500,000? It kind of depends. There are programs out there that will let you buy a house with like 0% down, right? The conventional bank loan, you need 20% down, right? So what do you mean percent down? How's that? What am I talking about? So the down payment, that's money that you have to pay up front. It's money you have to pay up front on the loan, on the house, right? So let's, for the sake of discussion here, let's suppose that you found a bank which allows you to have a down payment of, say, 10%, all right? So how does that work? That means that 10% of the cost of the house, right, the cost of the loan here in this case, so we're getting a $500,000 loan, right? So 10% of the cost of the loan you have to give on the day that you buy the house, right? So 10% of 500,000 is what? So that's 0.1, right? Times 500,000. That is what? $50,000. So if you could find a bank which would give you a 10% down loan, you would need $50,000 in your bank account to close on that house, at least, all right? There's more than that though, right? There's a down payment, but to actually start the loan, somebody has to pay a loan origination fee, right? So there's different ways that these are described. Your book describes it in terms of either points or a loan origination fee. So like for this example, let's suppose that you have the bank charges, let's say 1.5 points and a fee of, let's say, $400 just for the sake of discussion. All right. How much additional cost is that? Right? How much is so this is money that has to be paid at what's called the closing, right? When you sign the papers to buy the house. So what does 1.5 points mean? That means that you have to pay 1.5% of the cost of the mortgage. So what's the cost of the mortgage here? Is it $500,000? It's not, right? Because you're paying $50,000 up front, right? So you don't have to pay points on that $50,000, okay? you would just have to pay points on the mortgage amount. So the mortgage amount is what? Right, the mortgage amount. I can't spell mortgage. I always forget how to spell mortgage. I'm an idiot. That's a year. M-O-R-T-G-A-G. There we go. There, I have not lost your respect with my inability to spell mortgage. I guess I should have kept these thoughts in my head and not said them out loud, huh? Oh well, too late. Mortgage, so that's going to be $500,000. And you subtract the cost of the down payment. Right? So that is, like you guys just told me, $450,000. That's the money that the bank is loaning you. Right? That's the money that you have to pay points on. So if we have $450,000 and we bank charges 1.5 points, so then the money from, so we do 0.015 times 450,000, and this gives us what? Let me find my calculator. I've grown tired of Wolfram Alpha. All right, so let's see here. 0.015 times 450,000. Ouch. $6,750. Right? And then, what else? Plus the 400, so the closing cost, we have 6,750 from the points, plus the $400 of fees, and that is what? $7,150. Okay, so, yep.
How did you get the 0.015?
So, because I said the bank is charging you 1.5 points for the loan origination, so that means you have to take 0.015% of the cost of the mortgage to start the loan. So that's what points means. All right, so we good so far? Then, so what does this all mean? How much money? So if this is everything, now the truth is this is not everything. I just bought a house. Trust me, this is not everything. Okay, there are many other things, but just focusing on the loan, you have how much money? Yep.
With the points,
Mm-hmm.
do we just treat that the same as we would a percentage? Just take the decimal 2 points over. Is that
That's essentially that's what the book says. So yeah, if it was like 1 point, it would be a percent of the loan. So it's the percent of the mortgage, right? I shouldn't say the loan. It's the percent of the mortgage. Well, I mean, if you're giving the loan, really is for the 450,000, isn't it? But all right, let me shut up here. So my question then is, how much money do you have to bring in order to start the loan when you close the house, right? On the closing day, you have to bring a check for how much money? How's it work? You need to bring 50,000 plus the 7,150. So you would need a check for $57,150. That's how much you'd have to bring to closing. Right? So let me just say a little bit more about this. So like when you actually buy a house, there's a lot of different steps, right? Like number one, you shop for the house, right? You find the house you like, right? And then you make an offer on it, okay? If that offer is accepted, then there's like a bunch of stuff that happens, right? So like typically you have to have what's called a home inspection within like the first maybe 2 weeks or so. So then some guy comes, looks at the house, tries to find stuff wrong with it for you, and then you can haggle over the price. Or you have the misfortune of finding a guy who doesn't know what he's doing. He finds nothing wrong and you waste your time. It depends, right? Choosing the right home inspector is important. But anyway, assuming you can pass the home inspection, there's also like usually like there could be a checking for radon, checking for termites, all kinds of inspections, right? This happens during the month between when you make an offer and when you close. Now, I said a month, but it could be 2 months. It could be, different contracts could be different, right? Other people make offers that are contingent, right? Like you have a house, you have to sell it before you can buy the other ones. You can make what's called a contingent offer. Those are not as good. Like people don't like to have a contingency on offer, right? It's better to just have money in the bank that you can offer, or just a loan that you can buy, you can set up. Anyway, my point is, all of these things have to happen, right? So those are additional costs for buying a house, right? Because somebody has to pay for the home inspector, somebody has to pay for the termite inspector, the radon inspector, all these different things, right? And depending on the housing market, that might fall either on the buyer or the seller, right? So if you're a buyer in a market like Lynchburg, you're going to have to pay for all that stuff because it's a seller's market right now. Okay, it was 3 weeks ago. I don't know now. The interest rates have gone up so much that mortgages are like way more expensive now. So my point to you is that this is just part of the story, right? There's like a lot more to owning a home in terms of the costs, the startup costs of getting a mortgage, buying a house. There's another thing, right, which your book doesn't talk about, which is actually kind of important. Because a lot of you guys, like me, when you walked into buying a house, you didn't really research it beforehand. You just kind of went and bought it, right? And I just accepted at the start of it, you have to work with a realtor. Any of you guys realtors? Anyone here have family that is realtor? Okay, sorry for what I'm about to say. So you're like, realtors are a bad deal. I'm sorry, they just are. Because like this day and age, we have Zillow, right? You can like go and look at all of the houses that you want for free. You can study it yourself. You know what you want, right? So, I mean, there are exceptions. Sometimes realtors have inside information, things like that. But or sometimes realtors just have a better understanding of how the neighborhoods are laid out in a place. But this is not universally the case. I've worked with different realtors over the past like 5 years because I've moved. I was in Lynchburg in 2019, then I moved to King George for a year, then I moved to Alabama for 2 years, and now I moved back, right? So I have some experience with buying houses lately. And I can just tell you that some realtors are much less helpful than others. So I wouldn't assume that they're helpful necessarily. But my larger point to you is that realtors are really, really expensive. So the cost of the realtor is typically 6% of the cost of the house. So not just one realtor, right? So the 3% goes to the buyer, 3% goes to the seller typically. That's been the way it's worked for a long time. So how much money is that on a $500,000 house? How much money has to be paid to the realtors on a $500,000 purchase? 6%. What's that? You don't pay the realtor on the mortgage. You pay the realtor on the house, the cost of the house. What do you got? 500,000 times what? 0.06. You got $30,000. $30,000 of selling fees, right? This money doesn't go to the buyer. It doesn't go to the seller typically. Half goes to the selling agent, half goes to the buying agent, right? The buying agent is the person who helps the person buy the house. The selling person is the agent who ostensibly helps the person selling the house sell the house. I would argue that the selling agent doesn't really do anything at this point because you might think, well, they go open the door for the people to look at the house. That's actually not the case. The buying agent does all that. So like the buying agent pretty much does all the work. The buying agent opens the doors to the houses. It takes people on tours of the houses. It tries to sell people the houses that other realtors are selling actually, talks up the house, tries to tell people where they can put their furniture, all this kind of stuff. Selling agent, what do? They maybe help you fix a price and they put it on a website. All of you can do that yourself. I know, I just did it myself. I sold my house for sale by owner in Alabama. What did I do? I looked at a bunch of prices of houses. I figured out how much it cost. I put it on Zillow. I had, within a week, 7 people look at my house. By doing that, I saved myself $10,000 in my last house purchase. This is something you need to think about before you get into the house buying game. Think about, well, when you're buying, it's more troublesome. Like, you can be your own buying agent, but you have to look into this. Like the way real estate is set up in a lot of places, realtors are working very hard to not let you be your own buying agent because they want to sell you on the idea that you need a realtor to buy the house. trust me, you don't. But the question is, can you get around realtors in order to buy a house? This is a complicated question. This is not in your book. It's just a piece of advice from me to you, because I have gotten hosed for tens of thousands of dollars in the last 5 years because I had to pay money to realtors who basically did nothing for me. Except for the first realtor, he was great. He did help me sell my house in Lynchburg pretty fast. He was great. So anyway, I would just say, think about negotiating percentages with realtors before you get locked into, and they also often make you sign a contract which says you have to work with that realtor for this certain amount of time going forward. Like, think hard before you sign that contract. Think about, can I just, can I figure this out for myself, or do I really want to be locked into working with this person who may or may not work that hard? Our last house we bought in Alabama, I bought as my own buying agent from the person who was selling it for sale by owner. That was by far the best experience I had buying a house. We lost no money to realtor fees. That person who sold their house, they got all the money from me, and it didn't, and also, it's just amazing how other fees start. Anyway, I just think hard about whether or not you want to work with realtors before you start working with one. For those of you who are having family who are realtors, my apologies. But I think the future has less realtors in it, because there's these things called websites, and I don't know, I don't see the need for realtors. Much like Walmart doesn't see the need for cashiers, right? But anyway, I digress. Actually, I don't digress. I think that's important to think about. All right, so any questions about down payment? I mean, this is a pretty simple idea. You take the cost of the house, you multiply by the percentage down, and that gives you the down payment, right? The cost of the loan minus the down payment, that's actually the cost of the house minus the down payment, that's the mortgage amount, right? The same principles work for car loans, right? If you buy a $50,000 car and you need 10% down, that means that you have to give $5,000 when you buy the car, right? And then your loan for the car would be $45,000, and that's how that works, right? Okay, so the next question is, what would be the typical payment on this loan we're talking about here? How do we figure that out? I haven't described the loan yet, right? What kind of loan is this? Is it a 2-year loan? Okay, those don't exist, except for like businesses or something, right? Is it a three-year loan? I'm just being silly. So typical loan periods start maybe 10 years. A lot of times 15-year loan, you get a 15-year loan. I think the market standard is 30 years. Like, a lot of people get a 30-year loan for their house, right? I think my loan right now that I have for my house is 30 years. So if we were to say a 30-year loan for this hypothetical purchase here, what's the payment that you're looking at? All right. So for that, we have a mortgage payment formula. So let's figure out the payment for this loan. So example 2 continued. So the mortgage payment formula is right here. Copy it down here for you guys. PMT. I guess that's payment, huh? It's the amount of the loan times R over N, big fraction, divided by 1 minus. By the way, if you look at the end of the chapter, I know it's an ebook, so you don't maybe do that, but at the end of the chapter, there's this wonderful page of formulas. If you happen to have the physical form of the book, look at the end of the chapter. There's a really nice couple pages of formulas back there. But here's one of them. So this is the monthly mortgage payment. A is the amount of the mortgage, R is the annual interest rate, N is the number of payments per year, and T is the number of years. Let me write that down in different color here. So here, R equals interest rate. Sorry, my handwriting is cramped there. A is the mortgage amount. can't spell. Let's see here, what else was? N was the number of payments per year. So typically what? How many payments per year typically in a typical mortgage? What do you think? Do you pay every week? Do you pay every month? 2 months? What do you think? Every month, right? But there are loans that are paid bi-monthly. Those exist, all right? So you could get a loan with different parameters. You could do a lot of different things. And this is also assuming here, of course, that we're talking about a fixed interest rate loan. There are loans which don't have fixed interest rates. Like you can get a loan that has a low interest rate for like the first 7 years, and then the last 23 years of the loan, the interest rate maybe is adjustable or it's higher rate or something, right? These are adjustable rate mortgages. Sometimes that's something that people might start getting right now, right? Because the interest rate is 7% or something at the moment. So do you think the interest rate's going to be lower in 7 years? Maybe, right? You could maybe bet on that. So if you really wanted to bet on that, you could get an adjustable rate mortgage that it figured that after the 7 years where you're stuck at 7%, maybe it'd drop down to 3% as it adjusts or something like that, right? So you could play those kind of games. That made more sense for my parents who bought a house in the early 1980s when their interest rates were like 15% for like a mortgage. So you guys pay credit card rates of 15, 20%, right? Or at least they were that when I was looking at it last. I haven't looked at the rate of my credit card in a while, actually, because we just pay it off. But when interest rates are really high, then it makes sense to look at those adjustable rate mortgages. Okay, so here, for the example we were just doing, what was the amount and what was the number of payments per year? Okay, so here we go. The amount was $450,000, right? And then we're supposed to multiply by, we're going to say monthly payments. So we're going to have, what was my interest rate? 10%. Wait a minute, did I ever say the interest rate? Uh-oh. Let's make the interest rate 7%. All right, so I do 0.07 divided by 12, right? All divided by 1 minus parentheses, 1 plus 0.07 divided by 12. All right. And to the minus nt, what is here? Minus 12 times the number of years. So let's see here. And we're assuming that t is equal to 30, right? 30-year loan. So we do minus 12 times 30, I believe. All right. So we need to calculate that, yeah? So I'm going to flip over here to Wolfram Alpha here to do that. Come on. Okay, so we got 450,000 times, I'll do some big brackets here. R was 0.07 divided by 12, right? That number. So parentheses are your friend here. I mean, so your book actually has like sequences of calculator steps, doesn't it? So if you can sort through those, more power to you. I like to see what I'm doing, so that's why I'm using this website. Okay, so now I would say that if you're not using the website, right, and you've got to work with a calculator, a smart thing to do would be to break it into little pieces, right, and calculate one number at a time. But if you do that, you got to be careful to not like lose numbers in the approximation of the middle steps. I said enter. Come on. All right. Come on. You can do it. Can you do it? Did it work? Ouch. Yep, I think we're okay. So apparently that works out to about $3,000. So 2,900, I can't read. $2,993.86. So is that how much you have to pay? Is that your actual? So my next question to you guys is, if, come on, come back to us. Come back, come back. Thank you. So we just worked that number out. It's almost $3,000. Okay. Now, would that be the actual amount that you have to pay each month if you bought this house? So that's not actually what happens, right? Because in this hypothetical example, I said we put 10% down, right? So what's going to happen if you put 10% down? Industry rules, standards, whatever, says that you have to pay what's called mortgage insurance. So how much does mortgage insurance cost you on a $450,000 loan, right? That's a complicated question. That depends on your credit score. It depends on your job. It depends on a host of things, all right? So we bought a house, I think, in 2013. And if I remember right, our mortgage insurance on that house, which was, I think back then it was like a $250,000 house, something like that, which seemed like a lot then. I think our mortgage insurance was, I think it was a couple $100s a month, actually. I could be remembering this wrong. I might be remembering the first house. But my point is, there was one of the houses that we bought, the mortgage insurance was actually a fair chunk of change. And the reason for that was we were younger then. We didn't have as much of established credit rating and so forth. And so basically, they just don't trust us to pay back the loan as much, right? So when the people in charge don't trust you as much, they charge you more insurance for the mortgage insurance in case you default on the loan, right? What happens if you don't pay the mortgage? When you say you go to jail? We don't have debtors' prisons at the moment, so no. I mean, at least we don't have debtors' prisons that have walls. Most of you will be in a prison of debt your entire life, though. Truth be told. It's called a student loan, right? But okay, so my point was the mortgage insurance, that can cost you a lot. Now, in contrast, right now, my current house, mortgage insurance for us is only like $50 a month. I was like, what? Because apparently, like, my wife has been very good about paying bills on time for a while, and so eventually they respect you a little bit more. So for whatever reason, our mortgage insurance right now isn't that bad, even though we didn't pay more than 20% down, right? So the way this works is when you have a house, you start making payments on it, right? Once you get the principal of your house, right? So this is the next thing we need to talk about. What's the principal? So the loan is for, this mortgage is $450,000, right? So to start with, what's the principal? The principal to start with is $450,000. But as you make payments each month, you're paying money back to the bank, right? Part of that money goes to the principal. Part of that money goes to interest, right? And as you pay the principal down, right, eventually you'll get to the point where you have paid the down payment 10%, and then another 10%. Like eventually with this loan, you'll get to a point where you've paid $50,000 worth of principal. At that point, you have like about, and it's not exactly this, sometimes it's like 22%. It depends on the states and the regulations and junk. But once you get to like 20%, then you can say, hey, flag on the play. I have 20% of the principal paid. I shouldn't have to pay this pesky mortgage insurance anymore, right? And at that point, you say, hey, you call up the loan company, you fill out the form, and then they'll send this person called an assessor who will assess your house. And if you're lucky and your real estate values haven't shifted around in junk, then they'll drop the mortgage insurance, and then you can just pay the mortgage. So at that point, you stop paying mortgage insurance, right? That's one thing. So the mortgage insurance you're going to be stuck with at the start of the loan unless you can put 20% or more down, all right? That's the one thing. The other thing that you can't get away from is property taxes. Those are always there, okay? So like property taxes and also house insurance, those you also have to pay through what's called an escrow account typically. And so that gets added to the cost of the mortgage, right? That's a complicated, I don't think you have homework problems on this because this other stuff is too nuanced to make a homework problem out. I could be wrong. I couldn't find your homework. I printed out your homework somewhere and I couldn't find it. But anyway, let's talk about the issue of principal because I want to make sure I talk to you about this. Any questions about this? So this is I think there's a homework problem. Like one of your homework problems is to calculate the mortgage, calculate the monthly payment, right? So you use this formula here. There you go. Unless, of course, just a second here. Let me see if I can find my homework sheet. I think I've got it here. Just a second. So I have one problem from section 11.3. You purchase a car for $24,000. You have an annual interest rate, 8%. Find monthly payment. Find the amount of interest paid over the term of the loan. Yeah, okay, the homework problems I've assigned you, they don't test you on the particulars like mortgage insurance and, homeowners taxes and home insurance, all that stuff. I'm telling you that because you guys are going to be homeowners and I want you to have a heads up. I mean, your parents will tell you about this stuff too, right? But I think it's good to talk about. A more important thing to talk about though, and this is relevant also to so how many of you have student loans? You don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but I mean, a lot of you have student loans, right? And so, come on. So, as you pay the loan back, right? Let me look at this. So there's great calculators here. So let's see, our example was what, 450,000? No, the home value was 500. Come on. Why won't it? Well, that's annoying. It won't let me click in there. It won't, what? Well, that's just annoying. Oh, there it goes. So the down payment, we want, what did we say, 50,000 for our example? And our interest rate, what was it, 7% we decided? All right. And I think I had it set for 30 years, right? PMI. Well, this has some property tax and other stuff. We'll just leave it for the sake of not messing with the website too much, but I really just want to look at this graph for you guys, okay? This graph is what I wanted to talk to you about. So what we have here is a picture of a loan, a 30-year loan, right? It goes from 2022 to start, right? Over here to 2052 to end, okay? And what you're looking at is, so ignore the taxes and fees. That's kind of immaterial. As you can see, you're kind of stuck with that. It continues on. Why did the fees drop off here? What happened here? That's what I was just talking about, right? The mortgage insurance goes away at some point, as long as you have the good sense to say, hey, stop charging me mortgage insurance. The bank is happy to keep charging you mortgage insurance until like 30% of the principal. They'll do it if you don't stop them. They will. We've experienced that. Not that long, but they don't really get after you. Okay, so look at here. So the interest. So the first payment. Let's ignore the starting payment. That's complicated. Whatever. So like the second month, let's say. Look at this. How much of the money is interest, how much of the money is principal? Look, most of the money is interest, right? So that like second month of loan payment that you make, you're not really increasing your principal hardly at all, right? Almost all of the money is going to interest. See that? And what happens as it goes on is eventually you're paying less and less and less interest, and you're paying more and more principal. When you're finally to the end of the life of the loan, right, you're paying mostly principal and just a little bit of interest, because you're always paying interest on the amount of money that's still left to be paid back. You pay interest on the part of the money that's left to be paid back. So as that money dwindles down, you pay less interest, okay? And the loan is set up so that you, in principle, pay a constant amount over the life of the loan in such a way that you end up paying the loan down when you get to that time. Here's the interesting thing, guys. What happens at month 1, right, if instead of sending in the mortgage amount, you send in the mortgage amount plus that much money? What if you overpay the loan? What if you overpay your payment? Suppose, so our payment was like $3,000, right? So let's just say for the sake of discussion that this right here is, $300, right? So suppose month 2, you send the bank $3,300 rather than $3,000. What happens? What happens is you've just paid a month ahead in the loan. What that means is you no longer have to pay this interest. You just saved yourself $2,700 worth of interest. If you pay ahead, you can eliminate much of the cost of the interest. Now you have to pay more for the loan each month, right? But at the start of your loan, if you could just make some payments ahead, you can reduce the overall cost of the loan dramatically. Here's a number. If I could put $50,000 into my loan, right, towards future principal payments, I can save myself $150,000 worth of interest over the course of the loan. So paying ahead on a loan can save you stupid amounts of money. Now, of course, the ultimate example of this is save $500,000 and just buy the house outright, right? You pay no interest then, right? But what's the problem with that? We don't have $500,000 sitting around, right? So we need the loan because we don't have the money. But as a point of financial wisdom, if you have extra money that you can spend on a loan, it's a pretty good investment to pay ahead, especially at the start of a loan. Yep.
Could you pay more down if you wanted to?
You could pay more down, right? But so the advantage of, yes, but maybe you don't have the money at that time, right? That's the issue. So.
Does it make more sense to pay more money down or to save?
So that's a complicated question, right? So like one of the reasons that you wouldn't pay more money down might be that you just wanted to have a certain amount of money like around for liquidity's sake. There are a lot of different reasons you might not want to. But yeah, I think ultimately if you have the money to spend, then a loan is a bad deal, is the bottom line, Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. So if you got questions, come and ask me.